Waterfall is my favourite region in Undertale. Situated right after the hijinks of Snowdin and before the bustle of Hotland, it functions as a moment of calm, and yet is also more dangerous. It does not lack silliness, and yet is far more solemn. There is undeniably a change of tone here, in this memorable little area right at the centre of the game's overall structure. And the theme that is illustrated here more clearly than anywhere else in the game is that of humans and monsters. From the history on the walls to the history of Gerson, from the monster out to take the human soul to the prophecy that speaks of monsterkind's freedom, from the flashback of Asriel to the person of Monster Kid, the story of humans and monsters is at the very heart of Waterfall, and Waterfall is at the very heart of Undertale. But despite its prominence here, Waterfall isn't our introduction to this story. No, it's been there since the very beginning. It's the first thing we're told when we start the game. Long ago, humans and monsters lived together, ruling over the surface in harmony. But this harmony was broken when the humans suddenly attacked the monsters, and there was war between them. The victorious humans then forced all the monsters underground and sealed them in with a magic spell, imprisoning them forever away from the surface world and from humanity. This certainly seemed a decisive end to that story. The monsters may have yearned to return home, but they couldn't escape. They were to be perpetually estranged from humanity, with war as the only relationship between them, and without any hope of reconciliation. That was just how things were. There was no other way. Then, one day, many years later, a lone human child climbing Mount Ebott tripped and fell into the underground. They hit the ground hard with nothing to break their fall, and, injured, they cried out for help. And someone came. Hearing their cry, Asriel, the prince of the kingdom of monsters, found the fallen human. By all rights, Asriel should have abandoned them. He should have captured them or hurt them. They were a human, an enemy. But Asriel didn't leave them, and he didn't hurt them. Instead, he had compassion on them. He helped them up, and he took them back to his home with the monsters. And the king and queen, Asriel's father and mother, didn't hate the fallen human either. They welcomed them into their home, and all of monster kind welcomed them as well, and the fallen human stayed with them. Over time, Asriel and the fallen human became like siblings. They would play together in the castle. They would dress the same way. Asriel looked up to the fallen human as his closest companion. It seemed impossible that a human and a monster could have such a relationship, and yet it was so. In the bond between Asriel and the fallen human, there was a microcosm of a possible future for humans and monsters. A future where the two races were reconciled rather than estranged. The other monsters saw this as well, and were filled with hope because of it. It brought to mind the words of an ancient prophecy about an angel who had seen the surface, who would be the one to make the underground go empty. Was this human that angel? Could the hope of monster kind, to one day return to the surface, finally become a reality? Perhaps at some point the human learnt about this prophecy and also began to believe the angel it described referred to them. Certainly they began to think about how they could help the race of monsters that had accepted them into their world to finally go free. But how would they go about doing this, and what would the outcome look like? Their friendship with Asriel had proved that monsters and humans could live side by side in harmony. Surely there was a way forward that looked towards reconciliation between the two races. However, unbeknownst to most, the fallen human had a fatal flaw. They hated humanity with a burning passion. Why this was so, only they knew, but the outcome was clear enough. Though the monsters, and Asriel especially, loved the human decided that this love was to be denied to the rest of humanity, which was instead slated for destruction. Thus the human made a plan. They would poison themselves with buttercups, committing suicide so that Asriel could take their soul, cross the barrier, harvest 6 more souls, break the barrier, and then wage a new war against humanity. Asriel, deeply compassionate as he was, didn't like the plan, but the human forced him to go along with it. The entire underground was deeply troubled by the humans' illness. The royal family stood by their sickbed, imploring them to get better. The king told the human that they couldn't give up. They were the future of humans and monsters. But despite their pleas, the human died, and Asriel, terribly grieved, took their soul and transformed into an incredibly powerful being, which both he and the fallen human shared control over. The fallen human made Asriel pick up their corpse, cross the barrier and walk to their village, where the human laid their own body to rest on a bed of golden flowers. Perhaps this act was intended by the fallen human to provoke a confrontation, because provoke a confrontation it did. The human villagers, seeing Asriel with the human's body, thought he had killed the child and attacked him with everything they had. This was what the fallen human had been waiting for. They wanted to act in accordance with the plan. They wanted to destroy them all. But Asriel betrayed them. Asriel, compassionate Asriel, who had been so young, who had been so happy, who had helped a human though they were his enemy and who had loved them ever after, resisted that human's desire and didn't destroy the villagers. He didn't want the future of humans and monsters to be war without end. Instead, he picked up the human's body and, mortally wounded, went home. He collapsed just inside the castle and, dying, turned to dust. The friendship between Asriel and the fallen human had been broken in a single day. In a single day, the hope of monsters had been destroyed. At the death of Asriel and the human, the kingdom fell into despair. The monsters' hope of freedom had been dashed to pieces. Worse, it was the humans that had done it. That ancient oppressor of monster kind had again acted to keep them trapped underground forever. The grief of the king boiled over into wrath. He declared a renewal of the ancient war. He would kill every human that fell down, take their souls and shatter the barrier, before utterly destroying humanity and letting monster kind rule the surface. The people rallied behind him, hopes restored by this violent course of action. Hardly anyone seemed to recognize that this was precisely the outcome that Asriel had died to prevent. The future of humans and monsters seemed bloody and broken beyond repair. After a long time, a golden flower that grew off Asriel's dust was injected with determination and took on the consciousness of Asriel. But Asriel's soulless form left him devoid of the compassion that he once had in abundance. Because of this, as he thought over his actions and what had come of them, he came to regret his decision not to destroy the humans, and blamed himself for it. His former dreams of hope and reconciliation had apparently been proven false. Accordingly, Asriel became cynical and cruel, a being who manipulated others and delighted in causing pain. He adopted a motto to suit his new worldview: kill or be killed. By this time, the king had collected 6 souls from fallen humans. He only needed one more to break the barrier and destroy humanity. Secretly, he hated the path he had put himself on, and missed his wife who had left him because of it, but he was a broken man and didn't know what else to do. After all, that was how things had always been. There was no other way. And then, one day, many years later, a lone human child climbing Mount Ebott trips and falls into the underground. Picking themselves up from the bed of golden flowers they had fallen onto, they take their first steps into a new world. And they meet someone, Flowey the Flower, an apparently friendly face who offers to help the human learn how things work in the underground. This friendly face hides a sadistic heart, however, as Flowey unexpectedly attacks the human and attempts to kill them, but is thwarted at the last second by Toriel, the caretaker of the ruins. Toriel takes the fallen human with her and welcomes them into her home. She wants to keep them there, where they will be safe from Asgore and the monsters who want to take their soul. But the fallen human does not want to stay with her. Toriel tries to stop them, but through their determination they convince her that they need to leave the ruins. They need to return to their home on the surface. As they continue on their journey through the underground, they run into many monsters who try to attack them, as Toriel had warned. However, the fallen human does not respond to these monsters as if they were enemies, but rather deals mercifully with them, sparing them and sending them away happy. Because of this, they begin to form real relationships, even friendships, with many monsters in the underground. As they reach Waterfall, finding themselves pursued by a monster determined to take their soul, they learn from ancient inscriptions more about the long and bitter history of estrangement between humans and monsters. But also, on whispered words endlessly repeated by echo flowers, they learn of the hope of monsterkind, that one day they would be free to return to the surface. Alongside this, the human learns of a prophecy about an angel who has seen the surface, one who will make the underground go empty. The human's quest is to go home, but I don't wonder whether during this time the thought occurs to them, was this a hope that could become reality? And yet, over their entire adventure there is a looming and increasingly impending threat. Asgore was at the end of the cavern, and no human had ever made it past him. As they neared the conclusion of their journey, they are told the story of Asriel and the first human, and the tragedy that the monsters had suffered, and the vengeance which they were now poised to take. The stakes of the upcoming confrontation have been raised to the heavens, and, at the last, the human is given a choice: defeat Asgore and go home, leaving all the monsters stuck underground, or give up their soul, and humanity will be destroyed. Either way, there seems to be little hope for the future of humans and monsters. But perhaps there is another way. Despite all the damage that had been done because of the first human's actions, perhaps, if this human is determined enough, there can somehow still be peace between the two races. Over the course of their journey, they have made friends with all sorts of monsters: Toriel, Sans and Papyrus, Alphys, Undine. They have changed even the most radical human-hating heart to the possibility that humans and monsters might be able to live together. As they face Asgore, these friends all rush to stop the confrontation between them. The inadvertible conflict has been averted. Perhaps there is, after all, a hope of reconciliation. But Flowey betrays them. Restraining all of the humans' friends, Flowey takes possession of not only the 6 human souls, but also their souls as well. And when the rest of the underground comes to the humans' aid, Flowey proceeds to take all of their souls and then transforms back into Asriel, but a form of Asriel that still contains all the bitterness of Flowey within him. This monster, seeing the human before him as the very same human he had known long ago, now plans to undo everything that they have worked towards. All of their friendships, all of the progress that they have made will be gone. They themselves will be erased from existence. Asriel threatens to keep monsters forever locked in an inescapable cycle, unable to move on, permanently barred from any chance at freedom and any possibility of reconciliation. Still though, the human stays determined. They aren't just fighting to go home any longer, they're fighting for the future of humans and monsters. They reach out to their friends' souls and give them back the memories of their friendships with the human, saving them all from being reset. And with these memories restored, the human stirs up something else in Asriel's soul. A recollection of a friendship that once was. A memory of compassion. The human's friendship with the monsters combines with Asriel's friendship with the human to defeat the Flowey within him. Asriel tries to fight against it, but the feeling which he had lacked for so long overtakes him. He is again the compassionate monster who cared for a human he had no reason to care for, having been redeemed by a compassionate human who cared for a monster they had no reason to care for. Of course, that human isn't the same human from all that time ago. Asriel recognizes that now. Perhaps he saw them as the same person because Frisk reminded him of all the best parts about Chara in their friendship with the monsters. In a lot of ways, Frisk is a better Chara. Where Chara chose estrangement and therefore plunged the world into conflict, Frisk chose reconciliation and so saved the world and Asriel from the impact of Chara's actions. No longer did Asriel regret his decision to not destroy the humans. No longer did he believe the motto he had come to adopt as Flowey, kill or be killed. At last, he had the friend he always wished he had, if only for a little while. Given this, I think it fitting that Asriel turns out to be the prophesied angel who fulfills the hopes of monster kind. After everything he had gone through, having his faith in reconciliation torn down and brought back up again, it seems that he became, in a sense, the representative of all monsters. It is clear then that the story of Asriel and the fallen humans stands at the very heart of the story about humans and monsters, and thus at the very heart of the story that Undertale is trying to tell. It isn't a neat or a straightforward story. On the contrary, the whole thing is really quite dense and complicated in its many twists and turns and ups and downs that lay bare the immense hardship and struggle of the entire thing. But when, at the end, we look back over it, we find that it is a story of friendship. It is a story of compassion and hope and redemption. Most of all, it is a story of reconciliation. Reconciliation between humans and monsters. Reconciliation glimpsed in Asriel and Chara. Reconciliation lost because of Chara. Reconciliation regained because of Frisk. Reconciliation realized at last because of Asriel. A reconciliation that is summed up in one last poignant scene, as the monsters and Frisk stand upon Mount Ebott, looking out at the dawn of a new day and a new era of peace between humans and monsters. Thanks for watching.